Hi, everybody. This is Martha Creek, marthacreek.com to contact me. It's a website. There's 150 podcasts, videos, teachings, links, all sorts of things. And now this beautiful, beautiful series that I'm doing where I get to hang out with the coolest people on the planet. I have a very specific vision to get empowered teachings to the whole of the world. And I get to hang out with people that are about that also. So this is an inspiration and offered through a devotion of our heart to fulfill that calling that we have to get empowered teachings around. And that we do it in a myriad of ways, all the ways that we're different. So anything that's on that website, you're welcome to. And as we co-inspire together, then we have a greater and greater reach. So whatever you're about, whatever your calling is, this is offered here today so that you get a chance to be uplifted, to have your ideas, to have your dream, to have the life you want to live and create uplifted in some way and inspired and empowered through these teachings. And I have with me today a treasure, a colleague, a friend, a minister, brother, sister, soul relationship of some sort, Reverend Juan from down in Miami. So thank you for coming in here to speak with us and to share your wisdom. He's a young one. He's a young one. And he is an old soul oldie, apparently, because he is full of wisdom and you'll get to see some of it. So thank you for taking the time, honey, to come in here to join this. So let's look then at, I imagine, God knows literally, and whatever you call God, you've heard me speak before, and all of you listening that are following the podcast or the video, these are intended to be mentoring moments. And that if you don't use the word God, it's fine. So use whatever term you use: life, mind, universe, being, essence, love, law, have your pick. And whatever your references are, that we may use something from the Bible here. You may use the Talmud, the Torah, the Upanishads, the Gita, the Tao. Bless it all and uplift it. So in no way do me or Reverend Juan here want to limit your means and ways. We want everything expanded for the way here. So if we use a little semantics or something that is irritating or you have some allergy to, try your best to get over that and do it quick. Snap out of it and then use what would work for you here. So even if it doesn't all align, look for something that could align for you, because if you're listening to this, you've been appointed here. There's no coincidences. This is a synchronicity of some sort. So we surrender it then and know that something good is becoming of it for all of us. And as we benefit ourselves, we've benefited the whole of humanity. So think about who might be hearing this, Reverend Juan. And if you had like one chance to give them the message, the word, the teaching, if you could convey something to all of humanity, what would you convey to them? What would you want them to know?
Well, a couple of things before we even get to that, Martha. I just wanted to thank you for letting me be a part of this moment and this experience. Not only because I get to hear that I'm a youngin, but because this moment, I heard you mentioning that it's a mentoring moment, and I trust that it will be that for myself also. That through our connecting, through our sharing, that there will be something that either of us say or is in the field that will invite me into a deeper understanding of sort of what's been coming up for me, especially lately, where I know that I've been um, just open to experiencing a lot more than I had previously allowed myself to experience. So the one thing that I would like to share, give a minister, the task of just doing it in one sentence, right? Like what a mentoring moment that is. But for me, I think it's about just recognizing that we all play a beautiful part in the unfolding of conscious evolution, and that we are not a small part of it, but that we are it. And so the more that we can embody our gifts, the more that we can live out whatever it is that we are finding ourselves being guided and inspired by, it makes a huge difference, not just for ourselves, for us individually, but it does for all of humanity. So it's just that honor that which you are and what you've come here to express.
That is powerful and inspiring to hear. And as simple as it may sound, it's also profoundly wise and deep, because to the degree that we're able to do that, then there's nothing that we do that would not have purpose, and to live on purpose and to live with purpose, which is how I said who I'm going to bring into this podcast and interview series are people that, to my mind, are living with purpose and on purpose. And in one of the interviews I did earlier with the Walden Awards this year, some of those honorees, the man was complimenting me, and he said, was carrying on about how on purpose I am. And I asked him, what do you mean? Like, how do you define a life of purpose? And he said, oh my God, it's so simple. And he said, you are growing yourself. And you demonstrated that, Juan, as you opened, that you're coming into this as a teacher, as a wise one. You're also coming into this as a student with an open mind, determined, deliberate, intentional to learn. And I sure as the heck am coming into this for my own learning, with my growth mindedness. So we're growing ourselves. We're clear, and you spoke it beautifully and articulately, that we're clear as a bell that what we're doing that benefits us is beneficial to the whole. So regardless of your religious backgrounds or your beliefs, if you understand and believe in quantum theory or quantum mechanics, then there's nothing that I do today that contributes that is not contributing to the whole of everything. So to be growing ourselves, to do things that are in certainty, improving the world and our conscious evolution, and to have an element of joy in what we do. And you are living that out, how easy you were to laugh, how quickly you laughed, and how you used that young'uns comment that I made to get a giggle in here and some lightheartedness about it. So we can say our work is done.
If it were only that, though, right? Like, I mean, if I caught that moment by moment, yeah, my work is done. And the intentionality that I have to put into it, even just this morning, I was recognizing that, and I was sitting with being on purpose and really trying to be more open to recognizing how that purpose is supposed to be showing up now in the midst of a lot of different things that I'm feeling and owning for myself. And one of the things that came to me is that the foundation of that question, like, what is my purpose? How am I living it out? That's what guides me, being in that question, and how it shows up shifts and changes. And especially now, I feel like it's much more rich than it used to be, because even within it, and you're talking about joy, and I feel like I'm a very joyful person, and I'm recognizing that there's a level of grief that I've been moving through, and that I've sometimes, in the spirit of wanting to be joyful, have not allowed myself to really sort of feel into some of that grief and some of that emotion. And that if I do, the joy that comes from that experience of knowing myself and caring and being more tender with myself through it is even greater, right? So
I'm currently in a series called Sabbath, and I've asked at the first class, I ask everybody to dismantle 100%, to dismantle all their former notions about Sabbath. Any definitions, what you believe about it, and then to begin to reestablish for yourself a framework about what Sabbath actually is for you, where you get restored. And in the reading and the preparation for that class, I came across two different powerful sources for me. So one of them is a book called The Five Invitations. The other one is a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. You see it in there. and psychologically um, proven, so to speak, from the proof of the scientist, psychologically, that we're afraid, where there's such fear to own grief, to look at grief, to allow for grief, to even voice or say that we have grief or that grief is part of our experience. And that have a tendency to be afraid to look at that, to see what that's about, and to see that it's not, it's presenting as a monster under the bed, and it's not a monster under the bed. But we're never going to experience that it's not a monster if we don't actually go toward it. So to turn over the rocks, to turn over the logs and look to see what's under there. He also said, which was very powerful for me, and it blew me back a bit, as I say, that I knew, whoa, somebody's somebody's on to me, that we're afraid to stop, that we're afraid to stop, to reflect, to contemplate to a degree. We're afraid to, we don't know who we would be without all this busyness and keeping busy and the run, 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 even like beyond workaholism, but like a busy holism. So even though it's not work. And then I got a meme this week that said, scrolling is the new smoking.
Ooh.
And like, wow. So I'd love to hear you speak more. I bow to you for your willing to examine, to contemplate, to reflect, to see what is going on in your own human emotional field. And it's clear that you know to assimilate that, to integrate that, and not to deny, depress, suppress, or pretend that that's not part of our human experience, and the consequences of not doing this more wisely, openly, like you're describing, Juan, is quite consequential. So, like, what do you believe is the value of this, and any words of encouragement to get people to be maybe less afraid or more courageous in it?
Hmm.
To be
Well,
more.
I'll start with the second part of your question or your invitation, because I found myself feeling into this, what I just shared, as I was riding my mom's car this morning, and her radio is broken. And I had a thought, you know, where's my music? Where's the news? And then I had another thought, which was, like space, even in my running around doing different things, like it was a practice of just allowing myself the space, to just sit there in the car, and I really appreciate it. So I think part of it is just being willing to sit with ourselves and not and go slowly. Like it wasn't like I started uncovering like these deep, like difficult issues that were maybe there, but I was just sort of like slowly uncovering some of what I was feeling, and I was just going slowly with, okay, like we've been talking about grief with a few people around me. I was like, oh, so how do I feel that? And then it was just like a thought, oh, well, I felt the grief over the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? And it was like, oh, yeah, I felt the grief there. And then it was like, and what did that feel like? And it felt like an emptiness, it felt uncertain. It felt like losing something, and I was like, oh, and that's an interesting thought, that I would feel loss in somebody that I didn't meet. So interesting that that would be the case. And that brought me to, well, yeah, the interconnected connection of, so it was like little steps that I was taking on this intentional, maybe even unintentional road that I had sort of opened myself up to, so it wasn't where I was just like intending to go deep, deep, deep. I was just sort of playing with it, maybe if that's the word, or just easing into it.
Well, you spoke about that, and it indicates here, though, Juan, a mindset, and that is either a mindset that's open mindset to go, what is this about? What is the underpinning of this? Versus a more closed, stuck mindset that would go, turn away, pretend it's not there. Like, oh, do something, move, like anything to try to get out of that discomfort versus, no, I'm going to, and it's now referred to as leaning into that. I'm going to lean into that, or no, I'm going to continue to look here. But you also spoke just before that about you were intentionally more tender with yourself. And I believe it's a critical call right now to be quick to offer tenderness, self soothing, grace, mercy, whatever you want to call it. To be quicker and quicker and quicker to offer that to ourselves, care for our soul, spiritual self-care. And you spoke about it even without prompting to do that. So thank you for modeling that, and for your awareness that was intentional on your part too, that whatever was going there, even if it didn't make sense to you, and the mystified part of how I could have loss and grief from someone I don't know, but it's absolutely true. And this is an example of it. And I remember vividly the day this really kind of, and I mean clunked in on me, was when Princess Diana died. I was in grief, and I was witnessing people wailing, bawling, crying, collapsed when they got this news. And I just mystified by it, like what effect that had with people that had never been in her presence, that had not ever known her, spoken to her, but whatever she represented to them, the hope for humanity, that something there was possible, that collapsed the day of her death. That so it was the loss of a dream, the loss of an ideal, the loss of an idea, the loss of a potential that we saw then, that we didn't have the chance yet to back up from, to say she fulfilled a potential for us. Like this Saint Ruth Bader Ginsburg filled a potential for us that's not to be understood. And now it's our turn. It's now our turn to say that I'm naturally going to have loss from that through appreciation for her, admiration for her life, and well done, well done, and then some. And now what for us?
Well, and it's interesting as I'm hearing you talk about Princess Diana, and I just mentioned the Supreme Court Justice. I'm wondering how that relates to the archetypes, right, that we have. And I was talking to somebody about grief. She's somebody that works with people in trauma from near-death experiences, and that when in moments of near-death experiences, people feel really wanting to heal and connect to the archetypes, within them. And so I just find it really interesting that the two people that we just mentioned can be representative of the archetypes. And I'm wondering for myself, and this is, I guess, the beauty of being in the question, that as soon as I noticed that, it was like, oh, well, what does it mean to me? And I'd like to just go further into that. Like, what does it mean for this archetype of the wise judge, right, to pass in the external world? What does that mean for mine? And even in this moment, like, just being open to it, it's like, it's calling forth actually for me to lean in more on my own wise judge, right? The discernment, the ways in which wisdom can not only support me, but the ways in which I can express wisdom, like she did, to support others.
Yeah.
So even the grief actually deepens my connection to that within me.
Yes. Which you're also aware, honey, of, and I see this in you, like an uncommon stamina demonstrated through this woman. I also see that in you, honey, that you are working full time in a ministry for 14, 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
How long it's been, 15 years. And in a marriage that matters greatly to you, and working there to keep that sustained and sustainable and intact and cared for and uplifted, and raising a child and serving on boards and teaching and writing curriculum and speaking and finding a way to to care for your physical health, the physical temple of that. So it's easy for me to see that in you, honey. And I realize that I only have a glimpse of it. So I was thinking before we started this that I had this kind of framework to look at about your best practices, and without trying to give right answers and knowing that your best practices may or may not be best practices for others, but from a mentoring moments kind of perspective, I asked one of the other minister colleagues, she's 36 years in ministry, about best practices, and it really spurred quite a bit for me. It sparked me in a way, and one of her best practices was to make sure you have 2 consecutive days off every week. And I remember it pushing me back and blowing me back again, because I couldn't tell you 2 people right now that's doing that, that's actually doing that. So it's time for us to learn from people that have well trodden the path and that's been around for decades, that's got skin in the game and that's got some experience with this, and not from somebody that's got a theory of what it's going to take to sustain and thrive, not just to survive, but to thrive. So think about that. If you could frame it in, like, what are your top 3 best practices for marriage, for example, what would you say?
Oh, I'm laughing now because I've had to employ some of them this week. um, well, here's one practice that has worked for me. And this is for me because I know all situations are different, and I've been blessed in the types of situations that I've been in. But for me, it's a reminder of it's not as big as I think it is. You know, like the challenges, not as big as I think that they are. The disagreements, not as big as I think that they are. The issues that come up, not as big as I think that they are. And that gives me a little freedom, you know, to feel angry, to feel upset, and know that we are going to move past it anyways, you know?
Yeah.
I would say that's one of my practices. The other practice has been, and it's the one that I use this week, is like apologizing for making it bigger than it was. You know, I had a disagreement this week with my husband, and in the midst of the disagreement, you know, we hung up, and then I was like, called him, and I said, you know what, I want to apologize because it's actually not a big deal, you know? And it didn't mean that all the ickiness was gone, because I still felt the ickiness, you know, and I still felt the upsetness, and it was mine. And I didn't need to put it on a relationship or on him. You know, I wanted to own it. So I think those were the two things that are alive in me. I do want to say about practices, I found that for me, the biggest practice that has supported me in every aspect of my life has been to continually put myself in situations that remind me of practices. And what I mean is, you know, I facilitate like 4 prosperity courses a year. And yes, I do it to create the space for other people, but I also do it because then I'm holding myself accountable to, well, I'm facilitating a process of forgiveness, to do the forgiveness work. You know, like I do every single one of the practices in our prosperity programs. When I created, you know, during this pandemic, our twice a week, on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8:30 in the morning, a 15-minute meditation. Yeah, it was to connect with other people, but it was also, I need that structure, you know, and now that it is a structure for me, you know, Chris has asked me, well, how long are you going to continue it? Like, as long as I need it. So I feel like my biggest practice has been to put myself into structures that will make me accountable for the individual practices that I can employ in my life.
Well, and practices that are tried and true for you, honey. And it's a time like this when something like this happens where we begin to get disoriented, or like the rug's been pulled out from under us. Like, we've got to build in those times. So And as you're listening to this, this applies to all of you, regardless again of the religious beliefs, but your prayer matters and your prayer time matters. And if it's 1 minute for you, or 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, or 15 minutes twice a week, then whatever time that is mattered. And whether you use a 5-step process or a 1-step process or a 7-step process, don't let that stop you from having some kind of devotion to that kind of prayer time, and to put some structure in it if that's what you need. I'm very similar. I've just launched these Power of 8 groups that's been meeting now, and I ended up in 5 of the groups, and that includes 10 minutes of silence, like noble silence. Once you are in an intention space, holding an intention with somebody, or praying, or beaming, or whatever you want to call it. And those 10 minutes of silence have been like medicine to me. Very, very powerful uplifts for me. And I know to take silence. I know to take it. I know the consequences of not taking it. And I still was not doing it until I built it in through the structure of these groups that include 10 minutes at a time of silence. And I want them then to encourage that. And now's a high critical vital time to dial up any dial you've got on whatever practice works for you. So encouraging you to give prayer a try, and meditation a try, and not to try to do it right, but to do it as a practice to see how it could benefit you. You also spoke in your best practices of marriage, is how we framed it up here, Juan, but those apply to colleagues, to workplaces, to raising children. It's not as big as I think it is. Be the quicker to apologize, to own your part, to catch that it's a projection that belongs to me. I don't want to dump that out there. It could apply to ministry, to siblings. So the words you've used that were offered in the context of marriage are best practices for living, for relational dynamics, for personal dynamics, professional dynamics. So I thank you for saying it, and for the ability that I have, and listeners have, to say this applies across my life. So whether you're in a marriage or not, or whether you're in a family situation, booger or not, this kind of thinking, this kind of mentoring applies to all of my life. So anything you want to say, honey, about children? I love your little guy. And what would you say to parents that are shaking their head like, what in the world am I supposed to do here? What would you say to parents that could give them some grounded hope?
I wish it could be, it gets better, but when I ask other individuals about it, they're like, oh no, it's just getting started. No matter what age I ask about, it's just getting started. But, actually that offers a little levity. The thing that I've been sitting with this week is, and I was just talking about to one of my coworkers about it today, was that the things that annoy me the most are the things that when I sit back, I'm the most grateful I'm instilling in my own child. So that sense of independence, of being able to speak every single emotion and share his ideas with me about everything, and for example, holding me accountable to things. Those things can get under my skin very quickly. And when I think about it, the level of integrity that he is asking me into, and the level of integrity that I feel he will invite himself into as he continues to grow as a result of it, makes me very grateful, right? And it's the little headaches that in the end I feel are gonna make a lifetime of difference for Lucas.
I think so too, honey. I had guests here, new family members, and this little 3-year-old guy was here, and they're all just precious. 4 less than 6 years old. The 3 is the youngest one, and he most often speaks, Marmar, I love you. Marmar, I love you. And then the very next second, Marmar, I'm mad at you. Marmar, I'm mad at you. And once he said, Marmar, I hate you. And I said, It's okay, honey. It's fine to hate. It's fine to have this feeling. Just it'll pass in a minute. And it was just new to him to allow that. And I don't know if he'll ever have that experience in his life again, but he got it once of where he could have a mad feeling and be mad and to be understanding about it and not to have any big reaction to that. So we'll know what if we'll be listening to his interview 50 years from now going, once when I was 3, somebody said it was fine that I
Right.
was. So we don't know what kind of seeds we're planting here, honey, or that we'll ever get to sit under the shade of those trees of the seeds we've planted, but we absolutely know to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. He, you know, and I do see it, right? Like I do get to see it in Lucas. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about our most intimate relationships. If we're willing to, we do get to see what we're nurturing, within them. And we do get to experience it. And his thing was, we had a great weekend this weekend, but he was really upset about this one thing that happened. And I caught myself when I was about to say, let it go, I caught myself and thinking, wait, like it meant something. And here he is sharing what he's feeling, which is what I tell people on Sundays to be aware of, right? And to be comfortable in expressing, without fear of judgment. And, so it is a wonderful thing. And I'm grateful for our time together, Martha, because it's reminding me of, just how many lessons, actually, as just like we started, just how mentored I am being in my own family relationships.
And that's right, honey. And so, and that little one as a mentor, that young one as a mentor to this young one who's going to minister to that oldie, to the newbie, whatever. Yeah. So beautiful to witness, honey. Well, see, anything you want to say about ministry, honey, your call to ministry, how you're serving there, what you think any understanding you have of what it's about or what you believe it's about?
Yeah. So ministry for me is the conduit by which I not only get to express my passions and skills, but that I get to witness other people in doing that. So that to me is the biggest gift of ministry, and the thing that I have to remind myself the most about. That I'm here to witness other people's becoming, right? And the more that I can be in that, and the more that I can remember that that's the ultimate goal for me in that, I think the better served I am, and the better I get to serve.
Yeah. And what a sacred privilege, honey, truly.
One, yeah. We've both been able to witness in some of the same individuals and in some of the same experiences how deep and expansive witnessing can be.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like it would be remiss and I'd regret not having you to leave us with a little joke.
Oh God.
I'll do a good one.
Oh gosh. So for those of you who aren't as familiar, I'm known for my bad jokes. The thing is, I usually get to practice. As people can tell, I'm very funny on the spot, right? So it takes a lot of work to come up with those really bad jokes. But I did. I have one for you, Martha. Martha, I'm really excited. I'm creating a sarcasm group. I can't wait for you to be a part of it. I just scrolled through that one earlier today.
You did, yeah. And I'm like, it sounded exciting to me. So I wouldn't even know it's a joke or a bad joke. Double bad joke.
Might be. You're gonna edit that part, right?
That was a joke. We're not going to edit it. No. The laughter's medicine, I believe. And if we leave people scratching their heads or going, well, they're just weird, it's like we've done our job. So I love you. I thank you. I bow to you. I uplift you, and I say here on the recording, honey, how people can contact you, the ministry website, your email, anything you want to put here on the recording. It'll be included in the print material for this, but go ahead and put it on record, honey.
Sure. Well, so I appreciate all of you tuning in. You can find out more about the ministry I serve, Unity on the Bay, by going to our website, unityonthebay.org, finding us on Facebook. And then I also have a personal website, which is my name, Juan Del Hierro, which you'll get the spelling of, I'm sure, .com. But however I can serve, however our ministry can serve you, that's what we're here for. And we're very blessed to have Martha's support in being able to do that.
Well, thank you, honey. So marthacreek.com, know that you're loved, know you're never ever alone, even when you think you are. You do not have to do it alone. Maybe parts of it you do alone, but the majority no. And most of the things that matter and that matter to you will take longer than you like. So until we meet again, Godspeed, blessings in all ways, and tune back in for more mentoring moments. Thank you again, Juan. Much love to you, honey.
Thank you, Martha. Love you. Take care.
MarthaCreek.com if I can support you. Blessings.